At Dave Cooper Live, we connect the industry leaders in the architectural, engineering, and construction space with the people, the products, and the processes to help them build it better. Hey everybody, this is Dave Cooper and we are in Long Beach, California at the International Code Council's annual conference and hearings, and we got a special treat for you today as we're going to take you inside so you can watch one of the off-site panels that happened on the big stage. The room was packed. This is something you don't want to miss, but first, a word from our supporting members. Forward Solutions Group is successfully driving companies to succeed where others have failed. Are you looking to start a factory? Optimize your existing factory, streamline your production, or take your team to the next level? Whatever your needs are, Forward has a solution for you. Reach out to Ben at forwardsolutionsgroup.com. Howick Ltd. has a long history of innovation in cold form steel manufacturing and producing innovative precision roll forming technology for customers throughout the United States and the world. Check out their machine buyer's guide for off-site modular construction or fast build construction with light steel for framing. Go to their website, howickltd.com. Brought to you by Greatech, one of the largest Autodesk partners globally and software developer of the PowerPack Advanced Design, Advanced Steel, and the StruxSoft product line. The complete solution to automate wood and light gauge steel framing, design and documentation, all the way out to CNC output. Model, design, and manufacture with StruxSoft. Learn more at struxsoftsolutions.com.
Offsite construction is an emerging and crucial solution to address challenges such as housing affordability and the labor shortage. Today, we've assembled a panel of experts from across the building industry to share their perspectives on offsite construction and the opportunities it presents. To lead our discussion today, here's Ryan Kolker, Code Council Vice President of Innovations. Ryan?
Well, thanks so much, Dom, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, and especially to our panelists today who really represent the breadth of folks that are working to help advance and address a lot of the challenges that the building industry is facing, really through strategies we sort of label as offsite construction. So I'm joined here today by Jeff Brown, who's the State Building Codes Office Director at the Division of Building and Fire Regulations for the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development. Helena Ludlow, who's Chief of Technology at Volumetric Building Companies. Regina Gray, who's the Director of Affordable Housing Research and Technology Division at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And Ken Semler, who does a whole bunch of things, but today he's Chair of the Building Systems Councils at the National Association of Home Builders, Chair of the Modular Home Builders Association, and President of Impressa Modular. So Thank you all for being here. Maybe let's start for sort of what's your connection to offsite construction? What gets you excited about offsite construction? Jeff, maybe start with you.
Thank you, Ryan. So my connection, I guess you would say, to offsite construction is obviously I was at local government as a building official for several years, doing, I was first exposed during that, doing plan reviews and inspections of mainly the installations of modulars. And then the last several years I've been with the state of Virginia, where we administer the statewide modular program. And during my time there, especially early on, I needed to learn the background and kind of the behind the scenes regulatory approval process for modular that I was not familiar with, and really just gained a real interest in it as I learned more about the industry, saw it growing, learned of some of the challenges with offsite construction. And so what gets me the most excited as I learn and as I continue to see it grow and learn from others, like some of these other panelists that we have here with us today, about some of the things that they're doing, especially in other countries, and some of the things that the industry is working on. We face several challenges, not just in Virginia, but throughout the country, with housing availability and affordability. And I really just see offsite construction as not maybe the silver bullet, but one of the biggest pieces to solving some of those major issues.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Helena?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I've been modular most of my life, and I will never get out of modular either. I was part of academia first and thought I was going to be a professor. I got better thoughts and went into industry. So I have 12 years in the Swedish modular ecosystem, which is one of the highest penetrations in the world. So I've been working with the Eurocode and that type of code system for a long time. Then transferred to the US, being the Chief Technology Officer for VBC in 2022. Was part of building a factory up here in Tracy, which is serving the California market with modular. And then transferred back to Europe, and it's now working with steel modular in Poland. So super happy to be here and meet all of you. The offsite bug has bitten me and it won't go away.
Regina, what about you?
Hi. Thank you for having me first. In my capacity as a Director of Affordable Housing Research and Technology, our vision really is to move the ball forward in the area of manufactured housing and offsite construction more broadly. Our goal here is to convey and articulate very clearly the potential for offsite construction to address our housing supply challenges across the country and really around the world, and to learn more about that potential and scalability of offsite construction, whether it's panelized, modular, but essentially as a HUD person, the manufactured HUD code, and moving that along and modernizing the building standards, building and construction standards regarding there, and building on our knowledge of building science and materials, and moving that forward and really conveying that knowledge to a broad audience as well as the community at large.
Hello, everybody. I'm Ken Semler. As Ryan said, I'm the chair of the Building Systems Council and the MHBA. I guess like Helena said, the modular bug bit me over 20 years ago. And I guess I look at offsite construction not as a new way to build, but just the evolutionary step in the process to how we're going to build going forward. I spend a lot of time doing education and training and talking. I do love the industry. I'm a licensed registered certified builder in 42 states with our company. We exclusively use modular construction, also help with components and panels. I also publish an industry magazine called Offsite Builder. I'm not trying to do an ad, but please subscribe, it's free, to help you learn about offsite construction and what we're doing. But I think these are exciting times, and I'm glad to be here today.
Great. Again, thank you all. What's the biggest misconception that you've seen around offsite construction? Who wants to start? Ken, go ahead. Go ahead.
The biggest challenge that we're seeing is this misperception about, or misconception about, what manufactured housing is, even to this day, even since the adoption of the HUD code manufactured housing, people not really understanding that there's a difference between the term mobile housing, mobile parks, and manufactured housing. So really closing the knowledge gap on what off-site construction really is the biggest challenge, I think, both on the supply side and on the demand side.
And I'll pick up where Regina's at. I mean, I always call it the M-word confusion, because we've done a horrible job as an industry at describing mobile modular manufacturing and what the differences are, and that's really spilled over to the food chain of what we do. Realtors, appraisers, home inspectors, they don't understand the difference and how to see what the difference is or what the code difference is and how each is inspected or reviewed. So I think from me, that's probably one of the biggest challenges I have right now in the industry.
Helena?
Yeah, that always baffled me when I came to the US. There were so many terms. So the European system is very different because we are not separating. It's all part of the same code system, so I don't have that problem. My challenge is more about that is a delivery method, what method we're looking at. So nothing really differs from a permanent structure that you would see. I have to follow the same rules, I have to follow the same laws, I have to use the same materials, and the processes around it is the same. But for some reason, people feel that it needs to be different, needs to be handled differently just because it's inside a factory. For me, that's just a plus, so let's get over it, shall we?
Jeff, misconceptions?
Yes, and I would say very, very similar to what Helena mentioned is one of the misconceptions I see is I think a lot of our regulatory framework now is focused on site-built construction, and so it almost takes taking that hat off and kind of looking at it a little bit differently when you're dealing with factory-built construction, because in Europe I think they've kind of solved some of the issue by going with more of a performance-based code, and in Virginia and in our nation, while we do have some performance-based features built into our codes, and there are performance-based options, a lot of times I think we try to fit off-site construction into the exact same box, and it is a little bit different. And I'm really talking about the regulatory framework side of it, where in my experience, trying to set up the exact same type of regulatory framework where the designer, the manufacturer, the developer are meeting specific requirements and that are laid out directly in the codes or the regulations, versus one where it's more performance-based and more of the responsibility is kind of let go and given to the industry to regulate themselves. I think is part of the challenge and misconception is that we have to, as regulators, and I'm speaking for myself because I'm obviously one of the regulators for the industry, is that I need to have control and be responsible for every step of the project, and sometimes it's hard to let go of some of that control and trust the process, let the industry figure some of it out on their own and take on some of the responsibility.
Great, and that's a great segue to the next question. So Jeff, Virginia was the first state to adopt ICC MBI standards 1200 and 1205, and have quickly been followed by Utah and Montana, with several other states sort of considering adoption. Why was it important for the Commonwealth to adopt the standards, and what would you say to other jurisdictions that are considering adoption?
So as I mentioned, when I first started really diving into off-site construction to kind of understand how the regulatory framework worked, and speaking to folks throughout Virginia and going to some of the national conferences for MBI and some of the other groups, consistently I was just hearing the biggest challenge is navigating the patchwork of regulations in the various jurisdictions and the various states. Everybody does it a little different. Some states don't even have a program. You go to each local jurisdiction and they will tell you what their process is. So it had just become very restrictive and was not allowing them to grow and expand and build to the extent that they could. So it seemed like it kind of regionalized folks, that you pick a couple programs or areas that you're familiar with, and those are the ones that you work in, but it's hard to really spread out And then also, again, knowing that the more we could allow off-site to expand, the better impact we could have on affordability and housing availability. Again, I got really excited when I first heard that ICC was going to develop these 1200 and 1205 standards, because that was what was in my mind was, well, if we could come up with a standard that everybody could get on board with, and this could become the standard throughout the states, I think that would go a long ways into solving this issue. So I did participate on the 1200 and 1205 development committees. And then once those were published, it was kind of a no-brainer for us in Virginia to hurry up and try to get those adopted and integrated into our state program.
Great, and definitely appreciate your leadership and engagement in the process. For the rest of our panelists, how has the consistency and how offsite construction is regulated state to state impacted your ability to deliver projects or address some of the housing challenges? Who wants to start? Helena, go ahead.
Yes, I mean, navigating and working in the U.S. is also navigating a lot of states and jurisdictions. So that's a challenge that we all share. I think clarity, what the work is being done with having these statewide adoptions of these different chapters is going to help a lot. One of the things that a factory is challenged with is that you have a geographical location, but you can ship out of your state. So now you have to teach your factory to handle different jurisdictions and different rules, which is costly. So all of this system that we're having that isn't unified and isn't clear for everyone is actually driving building costs, and I really don't think that's a good way of doing it. So that's the challenge we are having.
Great. Regina?
Yeah, I think our biggest challenge at HUD is learning about how the inconsistencies and standards across the board might lead to market inefficiencies, and working with partners, states and local governments, and even learning from the international experience about what works. And as there are more states that are moving towards more performance-based code, how HUD can facilitate that process and learn from the innovators and learn about what they're doing that is working, but also without sacrificing affordability and other challenges that might not be that we might not be able to foresee in the future. And so learning from what works, and also moving toward a more standardized approach in terms of code acceptance and code adoption.
Yeah, and I really do want to applaud HUD's leadership in this area of bringing folks together and demonstrating sort of what's possible. Offsite construction research roadmap, great step forward. I know you're working on a few other things, but also the Innovative Housing Showcase on the Mall, where folks can sort of come to Washington, D.C. between the Capitol and the Washington Monument to touch it, feel it, see that it's real. And so, really do appreciate that leadership and the ability for ICC to engage in that process as well.
Thank you.
Ken, on the regulatory side, what's your challenge? What's the need?
Again, back to consistency. We build houses in Virginia where Jeff's at, and I'll just use stair trajectories as Virginia has a different stair trajectory than a lot of states, but it's consistent across the state. Is anybody here from New Jersey? New Jersey, we can have a different stair trajectory in each township, and we've built houses side by side with a different code. So, I mean, it's how can we get consistency? Because keep in mind, we're doing factory production, and we would like each thing to be the same. And when we make it complicated, it makes it more expensive. We can build efficiencies if it's the same.
Great. Helena, you mentioned your sort of experience in Sweden and Europe. And now you've been here in the U.S. for a while, and HUD as well has been looking at sort of what's going on internationally. What are some of the lessons learned? Maybe for each of you, what are the key differences that you've noticed between sort of the international perspective and U.S. perspective? And then maybe some recommendations on how to see sort of those international lessons sort of brought into the U.S. context.
That's a question that would probably take an hour or so to answer, but let me try. The biggest difference when I came over is the regulatory system that's very localized here, and it makes it difficult to understand how you are to set up operations. When you're working in a factory, you really need clear rules on what you're doing, and you need a product to be defined. And for that to really emulate what's happening in other manufacturing industries, you need that consistency. Construction code framework in the US is not providing that framework. I come from a background in Europe, and we did, in the early 90s, there was a whole project that took a decade where we transformed all the membership states into a performance-based system, and we're sharing the same base all across. The performance-based system means I don't have to approve an assembly. I don't have to have the specific wall tested. If I want to change a layer there, I can, if I can prove that that layer has the same properties and the same performance, that's why it's called performance-based, as what was there before. It gives me freedom and innovation for that sense. So I have new building materials that are developed that are fulfilling that space. And I can have that approved in a project without prior testing. That's a way of building a cycle that's quick when you're doing innovation, and building something that will help us move to a sustainable future. So that's the big difference I see. Now, was it without pain? Absolutely not. I was a student during these years when this transition happened, and we wrecked our brains for a long time to understand what's going on, how are we doing it. All the engineers had to take courses. It was a whole thing, but it was very much worth it. So that's probably where I would look, is to bring unity in that regulatory system and try to build a larger market for offsite altogether through that.
Great, definitely appreciate that perspective. Regina, about the sort of work that HUD's been doing to sort of see what's going on internationally and maybe bring that into the policy context of the U.S. Maybe.
Yeah, it's interesting about that. We had this great experiment in the 70s called Operation Breakthrough, right? Where, we tried to modernize then in housing then in the manufactured housing space. But this move towards more industrialized processes, and I think the learning from other countries that took lessons from Operation Breakthrough and then became innovators in that space will be worthwhile for us as we develop what we're calling an action plan for offsite construction, where we are learning from Sweden and learning from the United Kingdom and England, which is in the United Kingdom, and Japan and other countries about what works and what does not work in this space. The regulatory environment is different, of course, but looking at ways to address the regulatory environment that can help us sort of understand ways in which we can help our industry stakeholders in reducing the barriers to, let's say, the permitting process, for example, but learning from countries about what works in this space and what doesn't. So facilitating our partnerships, our collaborative efforts are going to be critical in our work going forward as we start to implement some of these ideas and strategies in our action plan, working with our agency partners as well. Our Department of Energy, we've been working with them on green building standards for manufactured housing and other ideas that we could potentially adopt in the future. But we're learning that it's going to take a collective effort, holistic approach, whole government approach to this, but also working with private industry and private organizations such as yourself, learning from state and local experiments about what works. I think that's the big lesson for us.
Great, and ICC, we certainly appreciate the opportunity to engage with HUD on those sort of fact-finding missions to sort of figure out what folks are doing internationally and what works. And we've actually started to incorporate some of those lessons learned sort of into our processes as well. We heard sort of performance-based requirements a lot already on the panel. So ICC is in the process of sort of reimagining the ICC performance code and sort of seeing how to make that more relevant and more applicable. The other piece that immediately sort of came out of the work of sort of seeing how Japan works through sort of their approvals process. We actually developed Guideline 6 to help sort of get the panelized systems sort of more, call it productized maybe, so allow sort of that flexibility that Helena talked about, but also assuring that what's coming out of factories is still safe, sustainable, meets the same requirements. So really some direct connections there as well. We talked about sort of what gets you excited about offsite construction. What really worries you? What keeps you up at night? And then maybe, if you can, provide some solutions.
I'll go quickly, because I know we only have a few minutes. There's three main issues that I see, and I'll just really quickly. First, workforce development opportunities, like really training people in the space. I think that's a major concern that we have. Another concern is the scalability of the work that we do in offsite construction. As we learn from what works at the state and local arena and in international space, how can we then help facilitate the scalability of offsite construction without sacrificing affordability and all those other things that we hold dear to our hearts? And then the regulatory environment. I think those are the three main issues that, how can we improve or address the regulatory framework within which the federal government, HUD, works. We don't build housing. So how can we help the industry facilitate that process in an arena where the regulatory environment is conducive for addressing our housing supply issues?
Great. Any other sort of challenges? What keeps you up at night?
I'm just going to add one. One of the things that I don't think we think about is the holistic approach to offsite construction through the design, the factory portion, the delivery, the installation, and what we call the set. And one of the things I think that's missing is the DOT, the Department of Transportation part. I do primarily volumetric modular, and it could be a lot easier and a lot more economical if we could figure out some of the DOT portions of what we do. I mean, and I'm going to say in Helena and what you do, imagine if you could ship a 20 wide module versus a 16 wide module. 20 wide is the magic number, it seems like, for so many townhome and other projects, but in so many areas we can't do it. And it's how can we not just impact building code, but DOT on the other side? I think that's an area we have to work with.
I'll say it. I don't know if it keeps me up at night, but it is just another opportunity. It was really eye-opening for me, especially when we started working on the G6, the Guideline 6 document, and hearing from some of the other countries and how they handled off-site construction, mainly the regulatory approval process, and hearing some of the things that are going on in some of these factories where, it's really outside of what the norm is for a building that I as a regulator would be used to looking at. And they're posing things like, a company may build parts of a building that there is no plans for yet. So they've got standard designs and they've got a warehouse full of these wall panels for a particular customer that builds throughout the country. So how do you work into our current approval processes something that right now needs to be inspected and approved, but you don't have a project and you don't have an exact building that it's going into. So that was one thing that stuck out. And then another one was somebody from another country talking about some very advanced manufacturing where everything in the manufacturing process was done by computers. So it's telling exactly where each fastener needs to go. Each cut is exactly precise by a computer. And so that's a whole nother ball game from what I'm used to looking at as an inspector or a plan reviewer. Do I really need to look at that at all? They can even put video cameras on their process to record each panel being made, so that they can pump these panels out or whatever they're manufacturing that's going to eventually go into a building. It's all consistent, and sure, there's mistakes or errors that can be made. However, does the inspector really need to be there if you can identify those errors if they happen at installation or whenever they come up, and you can go back and trace back what happened and make sure that's been addressed. So it's a whole nother type of process to look at. So when we, as a regulator, I'm trying to think outside the box and figure out, all right, how do I make sure this can get approved without trying to put my kind of experience in how to approve things to the side and look at it a little bit differently.
Elena?
I worry that we're not many enough in the industry. I know that the construction industry doesn't have enough people in the next generation to build the way we do, which is why I think Offsite is a natural solution to go to. But I worry that we're not people enough to populate that piece either. Because to Ken's point, this is a system, and it's not super easy to navigate and manage the system. There's a lot of moving pieces that needs to be coordinated. And we need strength. We need to attract the younger people to understand and be kind of, enticed that this industry is actually cool and for them. And I'm turning on the other side of the 50s, so I'm not going to be cool any longer. So I struggle with that piece. How do we get them in? And I think one of the solutions is actually what Jeff was mentioning. One of the reasons I've been able to attract some of the younger team members I have is that automation piece, because that plays into the cool space. When you're not asking people to have tool belts and walk into a very sunny construction site. Rather, they actually get to use their gaming capabilities to program and make sure that a machine is doing what you're telling it to do and instructing it. So I think that could be definitely part of the future. And by the way, I totally agree. Why would you need an inspector to check what a robot does? No way.
So I know we're running out of time, but you have a room of building safety professionals here. Maybe one sentence of you hope what they take away from this discussion and sort of the opportunities of offsite construction. One sentence. Who wants to start?
Well, if safety is the target, what you can achieve in a factory is a very safe and controlled environment that supports the people to last a lifetime. That is what I want you to take away.
Great.
I'll throw out what I would love to see with our our reviewers and our inspectors is take away understand the difference between the M words, understand mobile, modular, manufactured, and hopefully learn what it takes to get educated so you know what you're looking at, because this is, again, to me, an evolutionary step in the construction process. It's not a matter of if it's coming, it's coming. It's just when will it be here permanently.
Great.
For me, continue the move towards modernization in the space, again, without sacrificing affordability of housing. I think that's going to be the key going forward.
And Jeff, to your fellow building safety professionals.
Thank you. So, yeah, I'm just, in Virginia in particular, right now, our administration is very interested in getting out of the way, reducing regulatory burden on things. And, when I think this is a great opportunity. And again, sometimes it's hard for me because, like I said, I've always been a building inspector, building official. And I look at it all in the same box, but I think I would just encourage everybody to, when we look at offsite construction, let's try to think outside the box and see, obviously safety is paramount, but I think we can think outside the box and come up with ways that we can ensure that safety, but it may not look exactly like what we've done in the past.
Great. Well, hopefully we've piqued your interest in learning a little bit more about offsite construction and how it can help your specific community. I invite you to join the panelists for a more sort of informal Q&A discussion in room 202 BC immediately following this. And then we'll also have a discussion with Jeff and some of his peers at a couple of the state agencies as well. So hope to see you there. We have some other educational sessions around offsite construction this afternoon. But thank you to our panelists, and thanks to all of you for being here today.
Thank you, everyone. That concludes our ICC Talks panel discussion. I want to thank Kim, Renee, Cece, Victoria, Phil, Ryan, and our panel. Great panel here today. Let's give them all another round of applause. Our education program will continue today from 10:15 to 11:45, and will resume after the awards luncheon at 1:45. Join us for our awards luncheon today in the Pacific Ballroom. And finally, I hope you'll join us tonight for our Connections Gala, which begins at 6 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
What an amazing show. Thank you to all of our sponsors for helping us to continue to bring all of these innovative conversations to all of you out there. Please visit them, see what they have to offer you, and as always, subscribe to the YouTube channel and ring that bell. It would mean the world to us. I'm Dave Cooper. Thanks for watching.